In this week's Rebuilding America series, we are speaking to key executives and leaders who are looking to rebuild and improve the country's infrastructure. Yahoo Finance's Brian Sozzi leading the charge for us on that discussion. And Brian, I know you spoke with the PPG Industries chairman and CEO. What specifically did he have to say?
That's right, Akiko. Building a series here at Yahoo Finance. But PPG Industries, they sell a lot of auto paint. They sell a lot of industrial coatings that will eventually be used on bridges once an infrastructure bill does get passed. And they also now make highway road paint. So I caught up with Chairman and CEO of PPG Industries, Michael McGarry, talk about all these things.
As you know, we're long overdue for this. I figured how many bridges across the U.S., something like 50,000 bridges across the U.S. are structurally deficient. Our infrastructure roads are, graded out at D+ at best. And it is a little embarrassing when you travel the globe as much as I do, although not in the past 9 months, about how much more money our peer countries put into infrastructure that we haven't been putting in. So from my standpoint, this is long overdue.
I'm glad you mentioned you are a global company because you've really been buying a lot of companies that are focused on overseas infrastructure. How would you compare and contrast, let's say, infrastructure in Europe as it stands today, but compared to U.S. infrastructure?
Well, infrastructure in Europe, as you know, you got the options to move around on trains. You have the option to fly short distances very quickly. The roads, they have a lot more toll roads in Europe. And so the roads are in better shape. Think about Switzerland and France. They both have basically a toll tag that everybody has to buy. So it provides income in addition to what we would have here in the States, which is a usage tax for every gallon that a gasoline you buy. So they're putting more money into their infrastructure, which leads to lower logistics costs. It provides them a competitive advantage. And the last thing you want to do is when you're in the U.S. is have a competitive disadvantage when you're competing globally.
In your estimation, what's the area in the U.S. infrastructure that really needs the quickest improvement or needs some form of additional funding right now? Is it bridges? Is it roads? Is it tunnels?
I would say bridges for sure. There's, as you know, the roads, they can manage to move people off onto the shoulders so they can keep the traffic flowing. But bridges are clearly a problem. And I would also say locks on the rivers are an issue. We move a lot of goods on the rivers, not PPG in general, but a lot of our raw materials come in that way. And so you want to manage both the bridges from a trucking standpoint, as well as the locks as well.
What's the most important things you would like to see in any infrastructure bill?
Well, the first one is speed. We're late. The second one is a commitment to a standard, because you have varying standards around the U.S. And I think it needs to also focus on the future. So when you think about mobility, one of the things that we recently bought was a company, Ennis Flint, that does road markings. And you'd be amazed at the inconsistency on road marking standards across the U.S. Something that should be much more uniform. It's certainly not. And the ability of getting a consistent performance in road marking is important, in my opinion.
Talk to us about that Ennis Flint acquisition. It was a big one. I know Wall Street has been very excited that you did make that acquisition. What will that help you do?
Well, the first thing is it's a very consistent business. So even during the pandemic, it was only down 3%. So that's the first thing. So a very consistent generator of cash. We'll be able to put that cash to work to buy in more things. The second thing, it was an industry leader, and not by a little bit, by a lot. It was by far the industry leader in road markings across the U.S. The next one is that in the future, we're looking at trying to tie the striping on the road into mobility to help cars move to more autonomous type driving, and that's going to help. So instead of having a 4-inch stripe, it might have a 6-inch stripe. Instead of the stripes being, maybe 25 feet apart, they might be less distance between the stripes, and that would also be a benefit. So as you can imagine, on one hand, while we're happy to see some minor fender benders to help our refinish business. On the other hand, we're looking at the long term where these road markings can help drive and facilitate autonomous driving.
It's pretty cool stuff, Michael. Are lawmakers, have you talked to them about this technology? How far apart? Because I see you guys trying to move the ball forward in a significant way, but what has been the response from lawmakers?
Well, I'd say it's always been too far down their priority list. They've always been much more focused on, right now they're focused on the pandemic. This could create a lot of jobs. And as you know, when you do road work, those jobs can be socially distanced and safely done. And so we would very much like to see this done. I mean, at the end of the day, whether you're Republican or Democrat, this is good for the economy and it's good for business and it's good for the country.
I do want to go back to your business for 1 second. How are you playing in the rollout of electric cars?
Well, it's been a great success story and it's only going to get better. So when you think about an electric vehicle, you have a battery box underneath it. That battery box needs to be electric coated and painted. Then the top needs to be sealed. Inside the battery box, you have to have protective coatings because the batteries, if they're damaged, they can lead to what they call thermal events, we call fires. And then inside the battery itself, there's thermal gap fillers that you keep the anode and the cathode separated. And ultimately, in the batteries itself, the anode and cathode coatings, we think we can add a lot of value. So what we're finding is that an electric vehicle consumes 2 to 4 times as much paint as an internal combustion engine. So if you say $100 per car for an internal combustion engine, this would be $200 to $400 per car for an electric vehicle. As you know, that market's only going to grow. China has recently passed a law that 20% of their cars have to be electric by 2025. Europe has an aspirational goal, and I'm sure the Biden administration will come out with some kind of aspirational goal as well.
Before we let you go, Michael, well, I've always enjoyed covering PPG. I really enjoy your earnings calls. And one reason why I do, among many, is that you actually talk about the state of the economy in real language, and you give it to investors straight. What's your read on the U.S. economy right now?
The U.S. economy is actually in very good shape. The stimulus money, so for folks, unfortunately, that have been negatively impacted, they are getting stimulus dollars. And there's other folks that still have their jobs, they're getting stimulus dollars. So they're spending the money. So housing is going to continue to grow. Deurbanization, if you will, is going to continue. So housing is going to be strong. The car market is very strong. Right now, they can't make enough cars. They have the chip shortage. So we continue to see that. And ideally, if infrastructure gets going, then you'll have another leg to the economy. So I'm very bullish on the U.S. economy.
Worth noting here off of that interview, and as we start to talk to more of these executives for this Rebuilding America series, PPG's stock is really the only among the few that has started, I think, price in any infrastructure plan out of the Biden administration. Stock's up about 50% over the past year. U.S. Steel, perhaps the only other name that has begun to play in here. That stock's up about 100% the past year or so, Zach. So again, a lot of people I think are starting to position for this eventual plan. But again, good story out of PPG so far.
All right, Brian Sozzi bringing us the latest on the Rebuilding America front. Appreciate that.